This course is presented to you free of charge by TTJ Tech Services of www.ttjtech.biz and by Stir It Up of www.stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U, not an I, so that's STURITUP.com. TTJ Tech Services and Stir It Up are pleased to offer this course to you, to the glory of God and to the benefit of all those who listen. Well, and amen. All right. Well, praise God. My friends, welcome to Voiceover In and Out session 22 today. And this is going to be a couple of things that we're going to talk about that you're going to be very excited about for some of you. Going to talk about Bluetooth keyboards. And then we'll talk about the thing I mentioned yesterday that we didn't get time for yet, which was cell phone providers and eSIM and all of that. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Monday and Tuesday, no more Wednesday class. Wednesday is Christmas Eve. So Monday and Tuesday are our final two sessions after today. We'll come in on Monday. We'll have a class that day. We'll come in on Tuesday, and you're going to ask your questions. Remember, come prepared to ask all your questions. I've shared in our newsletter an update on our Christmas and holiday hours when we're closed. We have special, extra support for our gold members, and there's still time for you to get a gold package at the discounted rate as well, and still time for you to order products from the holiday gift guide, although we certainly can't guarantee arrival before Christmas at this point, but there still may be things you want to get that are discounted, so get in touch with us about that. And then we will be sharing the schedule for the spring 2026 training semester, probably either just before or just after the first of the year. We'll share that. Our next Tuesdays with TTJ help session, using the other link that you used to use on Tuesdays, will resume on January the 6th. Trainer Cliff has one more Saturday session to go for this year. It'll be held this Saturday, the the 20th, I believe. And he'll let you know the time of that. He may have to make a little adjustment to the time there. I know he wanted to make an announcement. I don't know if he's here yet, so if he is, he can put his hand up and I'll take a look. And that has to do with the spring schedule he was excited to share. But I don't know if he's... I'm going to take a look here. And if not, we'll come back to him later. Yeah, I don't see him with a hand up at least yet anyway. So when the time comes, we'll... Oh, wait a minute. Now he does have it up. Okay, there he is. There he is. Okay. All right. So we'll turn things over for a moment to Trainer Cliff.
All right, there we go.
There we go. How you doing?
I'm good, but when I first clicked the meeting link, it was asking me for a password. I'm like, what is going on with this? So, but anyways, if anybody is subscribed to my Tech Talk Coast to Coast podcast, which you should be, you probably noticed that I posted 3 classic episodes by John Panarese this morning. This is the anniversary of the time of him going home, and I know he's up there waiting for us. It's a tough one for me. I've gotten better with it, but he actually got buried on my birthday last year, which is Friday. So I posted a couple of his episodes. Anyway, I said all that to say this: the upcoming Mac class, More with the Mac, has now been renamed to More with the Mac JP Reloaded. And that stands for John Panarese Reloaded, because my style is going to mirror more of the way that he taught, the detail he gave, and the ways that he showed you how to find your own answers. So we are going to start launching those on YouTube because of my work schedule. Probably the last week in January, there will be 2 episodes a week, just like the voiceover in and out class, Mondays and Wednesdays at noon. And again, it's More with the Mac. JP Reloaded is now the name of the More with the Mac class.
John was a great friend and a great mentor to us and our whole team, Sarah, Cliff, myself. I know many of you may have worked with John, or at least you've heard the name, because he was a legend in the industry. That's for sure. He was a great guy, fantastic, and an excellent trainer. And I think we learned a lot from each other, and we worked together very well, and we had a good time doing it. So we certainly
Yes, we did.
miss, yeah, yeah. So we certainly miss John down here, but we pray a special blessing over his family and so on. And in addition to that, we're excited to hear that More with the Mac will be returning in the format that Cliff shared. Again, to be clear, it's mostly going to be online only. Uh, on the podcast, on YouTube, everywhere you can access the podcast. We'll have a live session or two where you can ask questions and so on. And that is just one piece of our spring semester, which we will be announcing all the details of that, as I said, either right before or right after the first of the year. But at least you'll know now that you can expect More with the Mac to be part of that curriculum.
And to even go further with the episodes that I posted, they are actually, I guess you could say, a teaser, a taste of what you're going to get because the 3 episodes that I posted are three that basically introduce you to voiceover, how it integrates with the Mac, and his recommended settings in voiceover utilities and system settings. They're they're about a year or so old, but not much has changed. I mean, because the Mac usually does it. So that's the main reason why I posted it is because it's basically going to introduce you to how the class is going to go and what you're going to be taught, and the fact that it's the anniversary of his celebration of life from last year, and just to get people who may not know who he is, who are now subscribers to the podcast, to get to know who he is because his teaching was one of a kind. So,
And I'm going to go ahead and do this early and make Sarah a co-host as well because we might as well since we're already talking here.
yeah, I mean,
And
because that's where she got her training, her first Mac training from, so she can attest to it.
that's right. That's right. How you doing, Sarah?
She would thought she could eat lunch. Now she has to put it down and come unmute her microphone.
Well, just talk between bites. You just have to. Well, she'll get to us here momentarily,
I
I'm
was about to
sure.
say, Sarah, it's too early to be slacking.
Yeah, but we'll hear from Sarah
That
shortly.
was a sidelong attack, making me unmute this early.
Really, I just wanted to make sure you weren't excluded from the
No,
fellowship and
I
but
totally appreciate that. I was just like, am I sitting on my phone? Where'd it go? John was, yeah, he was. I got I got an iMac like way too early and they basically, I got it in California, no training, no nothing, freaked me out. Got to Vermont, found John through the services here, and I have to say, yes, we did a lot of training, but a lot of times we just ended up chatting. And he was just a really fun, smart guy.
yes,
And he called me after that. He called me his guinea pig because I was, I was low vision. So he had to also deal with, what I wanted, which was, magnification and, tracking the cursor and, all sorts of things that I needed to do in order to use my residual vision. And we worked really well together. We figured it out, and he was great. And I looked forward to it. It wasn't like, oh God, I have another Mac class and I haven't prepared. And yeah. It was just fun. It was like, oh, I get to drink coffee with John.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely,
Sweet,
Yeah,
smart guy.
very much so.
yeah. I don't know
Yeah,
if you heard, but I posted 3 of his classic Mac trainings on my podcast this morning because it's coming up on the anniversary of his death. So, well,
Yeah.
actually, he died on the 12th, but he was buried on my birthday. So, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but no, but they're classic, and they're actually like I said, a pre, I guess a pre Mac, more with the Mac thing, because they're gonna go into right into what I'm gonna teach anyway. So
Yeah. And I,
And
I I remember his mom, I think, died just before that. And I was like,
it's actually his mom and his older brother.
and his older, that's right. But, I'm just saying his mom in particular, no parent should need to see their child die.
yeah, 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 it was certainly a loss, and yeah,
And
we
that's the last time I talked to him. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean
Yeah.
to make all this morbid
Oh
or
no.
Well,
Oh
anything.
no,
no.
we wanted to,
There was there's
good to,
one more that I did almost posted, but I didn't. And it was the very last one me and him did together last November on Braille displays with the Mac. But the reason I didn't is because he didn't want to disappoint his customers, even though I told him people would understand. But he doesn't sound very good in that one at all. I mean, he teaches, he gets through it, but he really, really struggled. And there was no way I was going to post that one. So I wanted people to hear him at his best.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
because
absolutely.
he literally died a month after we did that one. So,
Mm,
but it was an honor when his brother texted me, and I, was reaching out to the family saying, you know, sending my condolences and whatever. And his brother, his name is Chris. His brother reached out. He said, "Get ready." I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Before he died," he said, "the day before I died, he died." He said, "If anybody contacts you about training, send him to Cliff." I taught him everything he knows.
nice.
Yeah, yep, yep, absolutely. Well, we
But yeah,
on that note, we're looking forward to the more with the Mac JP Reloaded. That'll be the and as I said, will be that'll be one part of the semester. And if you are up in the air about what you want to use, iPad, Mac, both, neither, all of these questions, we're going to answer them for you in a very fun and exciting head to head battle, as we call it. And we are strictly calling it that because that's the relationship that Cliff and I have. We are brothers in Christ, but we like to pick on each other. We like to jab each other. I always joke with people that he's the brother I never wanted, but but of course I'm kidding. But so really and truly, the answer is, as you're going to see. Spoiler alert: they're all equal. Mac, iPad. You use whatever works for you. You use both. I run my business on an iPad. Cliff was always running his on a Mac, and then he saw the light when I convinced him. No, I'm just kidding. But he does use an iPad now also. So
Hey, on two counts, the
yeah,
iPad
the keyboard,
and the
the key.
Magic Keyboard.
Yes,
Just
the
y'all just
keyboard.
saying.
That's right.
that was
That's it.
not supposed to be public now. No.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He would never.
But
But
I have to say, I mean, and people who know me will find this very surprising. I use my iPad probably just as much as I use my Mac Studio now. It's probably it's a slim margin on the Mac just because of the studio stuff that I'm able to do that I can't do on the iPad. But I'd say it's about probably 50 to 48 is the
Mm,
go between percentages of how much I use my iPad. I got my iPad right here. I'm not using it on this call, but I do have it right here because I'm doing some other stuff. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think the Mac is supremely powerful and more complicated. And so if you want to go that route, it is an excellent piece of equipment. And
Well,
it is. And the
now
one
yeah,
that
thing I'll
the
say, so, and then we can get back to our regular scheduled programming, because a lot of people do this. They'll buy a Mac because they've heard good things about it. They'll play with it for a week, maybe two, maybe even a month. But because it doesn't work the way that the other platform does, or they don't give it patience, or they don't have the proper training, stirredup.com is where you can get that. But anyway, they take it back. So I'm gonna tell you that if you are considering a Mac, somebody that's considering a Mac, the first thing that you have to do before you pick up that machine, open that box and turn voiceover on, is remember that it is not the same. You got to act like you never picked up a piece of technology in your life, because that's how
Mm.
much a Mac and a PC are. They're
And
nowhere near each other.
that's the conversation John and I had, in the
Right.
beginning of our classes, is that, to figure out how they're different, because coming from a PC, it's very linear,
Yeah.
and a Mac is not linear. You It's like you can find where you're going everywhere on the screen, everywhere on the keyboard, and it's not banking on you going, in a linear way. One goes to two, two goes to three. You can get to the same place in, three different ways, and you'll be all over the screen, but that's not what you're supposed to be looking at. You're just
Sarah,
supposed to
I don't
be.
know if we ever had the. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
I don't know if we ever taught. I sort of feel like maybe we had this discussion in a class last week or the week before, but maybe I had it with somebody else. I don't remember, about how in the United States, if we ever tried to convert to the metric system, it would be a real struggle because the English, whatever you want to call it, system is I guess, imperial or whatever. I don't know what they call it. It's ingrained in our minds. And so even if you learn, okay, how many centimeters are in a meter and so forth, our mind is always going to be thinking, well, how many feet is that? How many inches is, sort of like translating to another language. Do you think in
Right.
Spanish or do you think in
Yeah.
English and then translate? Well, I think a lot
It
of people try to do
it
that same
yeah.
thing with the Mac. They
Yeah.
try to say, well, what is that on Windows?
Yeah.
And
And
it's
it's
not
the
going to
same
really work
thing
that way.
right. That's the same thing we tell people, is that, once you get through, figuring out, the things you need to know with voiceover on the phone or on the iPad, just talking about sort of using gesture, touch and gesture, it moves through that part where you're
Right.
thinking about it to that part where you're not thinking about it.
And
And
yeah, yeah.
that's that metric, versus, what we do
And
system.
that's why we drill into you folks the fundamentals and the predictable patterns, right? How
Yeah.
many times have we said that? Because that's what it all comes down to. I could take a month and teach you every possible scenario I could think of in Safari. I'd still miss some, I'm sure, but I could teach you every possible one that I could dream up and imagine and show you step by step. This is how you get through it. And you'll remember that for about a day and a half, and
Maybe.
then maybe, and then you'll forget
Right.
parts of it, or Apple will make a change with an update, because that's what happens in technology, and it won't be the same as what we taught you last month or the month before. But if you know those fundamentals, you will not have nearly the same struggles, and it'll be so much easier to get into it. And it is.
And that's exactly why we teach on the latest and greatest, because we
Yes.
can't teach you what's on iOS 18.71 because we're on 26, and that's because, as Matt just stated, you never know when something's going to change. You never know
Right.
when a gesture is going to be different. I mean,
Right.
I can't talk about it, but me and Matt was having a conversation last night about what's in 26.3, and they're good changes. So you just
Right.
stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. I will say
When is
this.
that coming?
Well, we just got beta 1 yesterday.
Okay.
And, there's possibly a long road between beta 1 and whatever the final one is. But, praise God, we hope and believe it'll be good. But I can say this, as of right now, 26.3 beta 1 is my favorite iOS 26 version yet.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yep. So that's a very, but that's a good segue back to our discussion about keyboards, and just stay tuned for that session we're going to have, maybe an evening. I don't know. Sarah's going to moderate, and we're going to have a lot of fun with that. iPad, Mac, PC, Android. We'll
you,
maybe
you
touch
I'm
on
just
all of
so
it.
so
you
glad we're
just
going to be on Zoom instead of, otherwise we'd have to be dealing with pie throwing and stuff.
I was about to say, you just like how he just volunteered you what you're gonna do.
But
Oh dear.
we're going to talk a little bit about the keyboards and then the cell providers and all that. And as you know, and that was a beautiful segue, because the fact is we don't teach keyboards until almost the very end of the course. And that is because We want you to get the appreciation for how to navigate with the touch screen. And even Cliff, who is the keyboard king, as we call him, has had at many points, maybe still does have, a keyboard in every room, a couple in the car, in the glove box, but but he knows how to use the touch screen, and that is first what he's learned, and he can do that. And so we want you to have that option. You're not always going to want to have to carry that keyboard around with you everywhere you go. So that's why we've waited until really as long as we possibly could, to fit this in before we do the couple of wrap-up sessions and so on.
And to even piggyback off of that, I started using the iPhone back in 2010, which was the iPhone 4. And as you know, Matt, and some might not know, they didn't have Bluetooth support back then, so a keyboard wasn't even an option.
Yeah,
You mean on
because
the phone?
On the phone, yeah, the keyboard
Yeah,
was not an
yeah, yeah.
option on the phone.
Yeah, that
So
was my first. Is what was it? 4S?
yeah, that was the
oh,
first one
okay,
with Siri.
that was the first one to
Okay.
get Siri. Yep.
Okay.
But again, we did not have Bluetooth support for keyboards back then. I mean, you could do headphones, but you could not do keyboards. We did not have Bluetooth keyboard support until, if I'm not mistaken,
Mm.
iOS 6 or 7.
It's hard to remember for sure which exact version it was, but I know it's,
So
and the
so
support
typing
has
on the touch
grown.
screen, yeah. So typing on the touch screen was required. Using gestures, double tapping the open apps was required. Wasn't no, hey, I'm not gonna say her name because everybody will go off, but that wasn't an option. I mean, even
Yeah,
when we first got Siri, that wasn't an option. It was
yeah,
just asking her to do simple
right,
stuff.
right,
So
right. So with these keyboards, the first thing that I want to talk about is just, the basic answer to what keyboard should I get? And I'm not really going to answer that with a specific make and model. I'll mention a couple. Cliff can mention a couple because he's got a lot more experience in that area than I do. I don't actually use a Bluetooth keyboard with my phone, to be honest with you. I absolutely do have a keyboard for my iPads, the Magic Keyboard Folio. I use that, but I don't use one with my phone, although I have in times past. But it's not so much about exactly which one you get. What I would encourage, though, and again, it's personal preference, you don't have to do this, but what I would strongly encourage is to get one that is designed for use with Apple products. That doesn't mean it has to be the genuine Apple one, although I like the genuine Apple one, but sometimes you can find a Logitech that might have even more features. For example, Logitech has this series of Easy Switch was the name they originally used, and they have different models that support that. And what you can do is be like paired with three, it can store profiles for up to three different devices. So you could use it with your iPhone, with your Apple TV, with whatever, even your iPad if you wanted to, although I recommend, Smart Connector for that, but that's neither here nor there in this class. But you can pair it, with a Mac, whatever, and then just easily switch between which Apple device that keyboard is using. So there are reasons that someone might want to get a third party Bluetooth keyboard, but I would encourage you to make sure that it is designed for Apple, because if you get the ones that don't say anything, or they just say they'll work with everything, you can get these cheap ones sometimes, and it'll say, Bluetooth keyboard for PC, Mac, Android, iOS. It'll just list a whole bunch of things, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what's going to happen is they're going to most likely use the standard Windows layout, and that will sometimes make things more challenging for you as a user, because when you go to press the keys that we tell you to press, they're not going to be in the same positions. They may be somewhere else on that keyboard because
And they're called something
they're
else.
called something else,
If you're
right?
using low vision or vision, then you're going to be looking at something completely different.
Exactly. So I would really encourage you, get either a genuine Apple one, or if you're going to go third party, there's some really good stuff. There's Logitech, there's Zag, there's a few really notable brands there, but get ones that say they're designed for use with the Apple lineup, Mac, iPhone, iPad. And
And I
so
I just to, interrupt because I can. Just kidding. That it's really good to have your fingers on the keyboard before you buy it.
well,
Unless you can
absolutely.
return it
Right.
easily.
Right.
because some people like that there's squishy keyboards, there's ones that push back, the keys, there's I don't know the proper names for all of that, but there's ones that light up in the background, there's
Right.
it just
But yeah,
it's I mean,
There's
that's what
the
attracted
there's
me
the
to the
clickier
Mac to
ones.
begin with, was
right.
I heard a MacBook in at a cafe, and I was like, "What are you typing on?" And it just sounded so cool.
Well, it is it, and that's such an important point, especially if you're picky about it, which a lot of people are. A lot of people, it's a very personal thing on what their keys feel like, and we like to go. My son is very into that. We go to Best Buy and he'll walk around and show me all the different, keyboards and the ones he likes for gaming. And he's replaced his keyboard and replaced keys and done all sorts switches and all
Mm,
sorts of things with his gaming PC that he built. But we do
mm,
that. But it's funny, and the classic story I can tell you is about a keyboard that Apple doesn't even make anymore now. It was called a Smart Keyboard Folio. It was a little different than the Magic Keyboard, but it was for the older iPads, and it was a very
It was
unusual feel.
overpriced, and don't get me started on that one. You want to open
it
up
was
that can of worms?
it was a very unusual typing experience,
Yes, it
and
was.
it had almost this like fabric covering over the keys. And I remember when I was considering buying it the first time, or one of the first times, I watched two videos on YouTube back to back that were reviews of this keyboard. The first video review, the person said, "This is the worst typing experience I've ever had. Don't buy this keyboard." The very next video I watched, I kid you not, the person said, "This is the absolute best typing experience I've ever had. You need to buy this keyboard." So that just proves how much that's personal preference comes into that. So yeah, if you can get your hands on one, wherever they are, and somebody's willing to show you, that's a great advantage for you. Like Sarah said, unless you can return it, and you don't mind doing that if you have
Right
to.
now,
But
you can return stuff to Amazon up to January 31st. So right now, that's
yes,
probably about what, 6 weeks. I recommend the Logitech, and let me make sure I say this clearly, and I'll tell you why. The Logitech MX or the MXS. The MXS is the one with the numpad, is the extended keyboard with the numpad. The MX is the compact one without the keyboard or without the numpad. And there's also a Windows version and a Mac version. So depending on if you're just going to use it with your iPhone and your iPad, then I would just get the Mac version. If you're going to use it for your PC, because it can pair with up to 3 devices on each. If you're gonna use it with your PC, then I would get the PC version if that's gonna be the dominant um item you're going to be using with it. I have a PC at home that I very rarely touch. I probably turn it on to update it, but I have a PC at work, which because that's what I teach. So my one, all of mine are Mac layouts because I know the keys, but somebody else might not. But let me get back to why I said the MX and the MXS Logitech keyboards. I guess some people get it because of their budget. But the Logitech K380 is the absolute worst model of the Logitech keyboard. So I don't recommend it. It is cheap. And if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't pair it up to 3 devices. Plus, it's all the way back on uh, Bluetooth 2.0. If I'm not mistaken, that
that's
we're
such
all
an old keyboard.
right. We're
Do
all the way
they
up to 6 point something, aren't we, on Bluetooth?
at least 5 point something? Do they even
Yeah.
sell that keyboard new anymore?
Unfortunately, Amazon does. And a lot of people will gravitate to it because of the price. But it's not, I mean, the experience for me was horrible. The keys are too loud. The one that I have now, people don't even know I'm typing because it's so quiet. And like Matt stated before, I like the way that my hands or my fingers feel on the keys. There's like a little indentation, and it feels like my fingertips belong on this keyboard when it's typing. Some keyboards or some keys are flat and your fingers slide off the side and end up hitting another key, or the corners are too sharp. The MX and the MXS are not like that. They are smooth. They have indentations. Again, you can pair it with 3 devices if you have some sight. it has backlit keyboard. I turn it off because it reserves the battery. Plus, it doesn't take traditional AA or AAA batteries. It's charged by a USB-C cable, and if you have the backlighting off, it'll probably last you up to 6 months between charges. With the backlighting on, I think it's only 2 or 3 months, but it's easy to charge. USB-C is pretty much the standard now, but this is my favorite keyboard, and like I said, it's
Well,
quiet, it's comfortable, and it's just and it's affordable. So
that's the other
Can you
point that I
can
want
you
to bring
say
up.
what the can you say what the pro and con is for getting the numpad?
well, it depends on your workflow. I have it at my work desk because we have to teach JAWS. They teach JAWS with the numpad, even though I use the laptop layout. I don't even use the numpad. But some people might like it for entering data, like because of phone numbers, or if they're working in accounting or 10 key, whatever. That may
Doesn't
be
it
the
also
reason that they
have
get
like
it.
home, like it has like like different numbers have navigational?
Yeah, it has
Uh,
home and end. It also has page up, page down. It has a
yeah.
print thing, and you can also lock the numpad. And it also has an enter and delete key on it too. So,
Yeah.
it just depends on your personal preference. I prefer the compact one, and the laptop layout when I'm at work. But because I have to teach it, I just have it there for reference, keep myself fresh on it, and whatever the case may be. So, but anybody who wants to have an affordable keyboard that's gonna do everything you need it to do and can. I mean, because another thing, reason some people get it, Sarah, is because when they're on phone calls with like banks and you have to enter your account number and stuff like that, they
Yeah.
feel that numpad is a little bit better because of the numbers being stacked instead of all the way across. So it just
Right.
depends on your preference.
Right.
But the
Yeah.
keyboard is comfortable, affordable, and it's at the top of my list. I mean, unless they come out with something that's a little bit smaller and the keys are placed differently, this is the keyboard that I'll be using for a while.
And that's that MX or MXS, right?
Correct. I mean,
Um,
they do make the Logitech. We'll get to that when we get to the iPad class, but they do make the Logitech Combo Touch, which is a great keyboard too. So
yeah, yeah. And then, one of the points that you brought up too, Cliff, that I want to touch on is, and I think this would be an influence for me if I were buying one, is the charging options. Because one of those older keyboards like K380, I would suspect probably uses micro USB, right?
either that or it takes batteries. I'm not for sure because I
Oh,
haven't seen one in a
okay.
while, but I do know a couple people who own it, so I'll
Yeah.
reach out to them and ask them. But
I
I think
don't like.
if micro USB does people even use that anymore?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I am not a fan, and I'm not trying to be, critical. I mean, God loves everybody, and it's not, anything like that. But I'm not a fan of micro USB. I never was. First of all, because
I double that.
yeah, yeah. First of all,
It's like it only goes in one way
well, right,
and
and it's very finicky. You can so easily bend the pins on it,
yep.
and also Apple never used it, so it didn't really have a logical place in our home unless you happened to buy some third-party device that you needed it for. So I would, when you're looking at Bluetooth keyboards, see how they charge. I like the USB-C thing because that's what everybody's doing now, and that just makes sense. And then my other point on this too, they make all kinds of stuff. They make foldable ones, they make all sorts of things. But also, if you do want to get the Apple one, if you do want just to stay in the genuine Apple brand, Apple does make their own Bluetooth keyboard. It's just called the Magic Keyboard, not to be confused with. If you look for that, make sure you read what it says, because there's also Magic keyboards for the iPad and different iPad models. But this is just the Magic Bluetooth Magic Keyboard that really comes with the Mac. They have one that has Touch ID, but I don't think, now, Cliff, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't use the Touch ID on the Apple Magic keyboard for the Mac. You can't use that as Touch ID on your iPad or something, right? It
No,
that
you
only
cannot. It has to
right.
be a silicone. It has to be a silicone Mac.
Mac, that's what I
And
thought.
and the other thing that I will touch on with that too, and I'm not trying to sway anybody, but that Magic Keyboard for the iPhone or Mac, whatever. I mean, because it's going to be for both, either one. It can
Right.
only pair with one device at a time,
Right.
and it costs more than the Logitech MX.
Right.
Just putting it out there.
Right.
And on top of that, I don't know if Logitech and Apple have a quote unquote silent partnership or whatever, but the Logitech keyboard layout is identical. to what the Magic Keyboard is. Either
Right.
the numpad version and the extended version. They're identical. And
Right.
I know because I
Right.
have the Magic Keyboard with Touch ID with the numpad at home, and it's collecting dust because, like I said, the one that Logitech Mesh pairs with three devices, and that, like I said, the layout is identical. I got that keyboard and couldn't get rid of it, so sometimes I just leave it on because the one thing that the Logitech does not have is Touch ID. So if I need to authenticate myself on a website or my password's app on my phone, I'll just reach down and touch the Touch ID on the Magic Keyboard and go on about my business. That's the only
Right.
thing that is good for. I'm not saying it's not a great keyboard. It's well built, it's durable, it's metal, and it's comfortable to type on. I just prefer the Logitech for the reasons I've already stated.
Right. Right.
Do you
So
guys
let's talk.
remember?
Oh,
You remember that keyboard? I don't know if it was like probably 10 years ago. It was metal, and it had like a roll at the back where you put
Oh yeah, when you had to put
batteries.
two AAA batteries in it,
Yeah,
yeah.
huh?
oh yeah,
I
that was the
loved that
And hold up,
thing.
and on top of that, you needed a quarter or something to open the battery compartment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
that was
loved
the
that
original
thing.
Apple Magic Keyboard. That was the
Oh,
Yep.
one. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love the feel of it. I love the size. I love the typing. But those batteries, they were annoying.
Well, I like the
I
fact that we don't have to change batteries anymore on that kind of stuff. It's
I
nicer to
still have it, and I
really.
tried to use it with my iPhone, and sometimes it'll pair sort of, and sometimes it won't.
Yeah. Yep. So let's talk a little bit about the layout. Now, I'm going to focus on the one without a numpad or a numeric keypad because I suspect that that's what most people will use. If Cliff and Sarah, or one of them, I know Cliff knows it, if one of them wants to fill in then the gaps and share what the layout is on the one with the numpad, that's absolutely fine. I don't have that version, so I really can't speak to that. But I want to tell you the basic layout. Now, obviously, they're all QWERTY. You know what that means. So the key, the letters and so forth, I'm not going to get into that. I want to talk about the bottom row and I want to talk about the top row. And again, this is for the non-numpad ones. So if we start on the very bottom row of keys and we start at the left, as far left as you can go, it's either going to be called a function key, the letters FN, or it's going to be called a globe key. The Apple keyboards, they actually call it a globe key. It also serves as a function key in those cases where it might be needed. But the reason it's called a globe key is because pressing that, it has a little globe symbol on it, and it will allow you to change on screen whether you see emojis or you can pick other keyboard languages if you have a bunch of keyboards installed. And I'm talking about software keyboards. It's not going to make it so that you can, press the letter G and it'll insert a smiley emoji or something like that. It doesn't do that. It just brings them up on screen by pressing
Hey,
that.
that's something that, hey, look, we need to email Apple about. That's actually a good idea. First letter navigation when you push that globe key. You know what I'm saying?
That would be interesting. But there's probably too many emojis to fill in. Yeah, I guess you
Yeah.
could have your favorite ones or something. But yeah,
And I'll
no. So
stop you right there because up until about a year ago, the numpad version did not start with that globe key, but it does now. The
oh,
the
okay.
the globe key used to be, or it's AKA function key, on
Right.
the numpad version used to be up in what they call the 9 pack or 6 pack, whatever that is. But now it's no longer. Maybe they got enough complaints, or they just decided to move it. I'm glad they did because it was kind of annoying to have to reach up there with the numpad version. But the numpad version of this keyboard, of this Magic Keyboard that Matt talked about, now does have the globe key in the bottom left corner. It
You
didn't
know
used
what?
to. It used to be the control key, but now it
Yeah.
does.
Actually, Cliff, I remember that. And the reason I remember that is because the very first iMac that we ever had, my wife wanted a numpad. And at that time, they didn't make a Bluetooth one with a numpad. So I had to get a wired one in order to get the numeric keypad. But I do remember that the function key was not down at the bottom at that time. So that was very interesting. Good point. So we have globe at the bottom left, or you might call it function. It's the same one and the same key usually. The second one in is your control key. I'll say this a couple times so you can review it or if you're taking notes. The third one in is your option key.
As a voiceover user, them last two keys are important because if
Yes,
you're not using quick nav, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but if
right.
you're not using quick nav as a voiceover user, control and options are your voiceover modifiers, meaning that's
Exactly.
what you have to hold down to navigate on your phone screen.
That's right. Exactly. And then the final key to the left of the space bar is the command key. After command, you have the space bar, and then on the right side, you have another command and another option. So that whole bottom row, let me say that again: globe or function, control, option, command, space bar, command, option. One more time from left to right, bottom row: globe, control, option, command, space bar, command, option. That is your bottom row, and then you have the arrow keys and things of that nature. Again, that's not really any different from what you might already be used to if you've ever typed on another keyboard. Um, Now, what about the top row? Well, iOS and iPad OS technically, and there's a little gray area here that I'll get into, but technically, they don't really recognize your F1 through F12 function keys at the top of the keyboard as such. They technically don't. And so there have actually been Apple keyboards that have completely eliminated that row, and your top row was just your regular numbers. But what a lot of third-party companies did, and Apple does too now, and really had in some different ways, is they use that top row for what they call iOS shortcuts. So, for example, what we normally think of as the F8 key would be your play pause button. You can do media controls with that. What we normally think of as F1 and F2, they can do either screen brightness or, in some cases, keyboard brightness, just depending on the keyboard. That top row contains buttons for SIRI, for spotlight search, for turning on Do Not Disturb. There's all sorts of different things that they do, and sometimes it'll vary depending on the keyboard, but a lot of them have now kind of been unified to do the same thing. Now, when I said technically, and I said there's some gray area that they don't really recognize F1 through F12, sometimes those names are still used, and I think it's probably because it is something that a lot of people are used to, and so it's just easier. And especially with voiceover navigation, and really especially on the iPad, you're not going to see all of this on the iPhone, but you might hear them say like Control Option F2 or something. So sometimes that's still recognized and acknowledged, but really and truly, for all intents and purposes, we just want to think of that top row, if you have it, as a row of iOS shortcuts. And to find out for sure exactly what they do, you're going to want to consult your documentation. And if you don't have sighted assistance or something like that, you can Google it or ask, ChatGPT or something. I actually asked ChatGPT the layout of the top row on a keyboard recently, and she literally read it to me from left to right and just said what each key did. So you can do those kinds of things. You can find out. But some of that's not going to be the same on every model. Others will. It's very, very common that the F7 through F12, as we would think of them, would be your media control keys. So like what you think of as F7 is the previous or rewind, and then you have play pause, and then you have fast forward or next, and then you have mute, and then what we often would think of as F11 and F12 would be like volume down and volume up. So you see that a lot. There's usually a key to the right of that will lock the phone or put it to sleep, in other words, lock the screen. So you can expect that there will be a row of these that'll perform different functions like that. Now, when we are using VoiceOver, if we decide that we want to navigate using the keyboard, we have to remember what Trainer Cliff said, that you need to use the so-called voiceover keys or voiceover modifier keys. I'll get into QuickNav in a little bit, but let's just forget about QuickNav for a moment. Let's just talk about the basics. If you are a Windows user, listen up, because I'm going to share an important piece of information with you right now. Windows primarily has you navigate, unless they've changed this. Cliff, correct me if I'm wrong. Windows primarily has you navigate using Windows commands like the tab key and shift tab and left and right arrows and things of that nature. And that's moving using system commands, Windows commands. Then they use their screen reader specific commands only to get more information or to do specific things that are screen reader only, like your JAWS cursor and that sort of thing. The Mac and the iPhone and iPad, they're kind of different in that regard. Almost all navigation, with a possible few, well, a definite few exceptions that I'll get into shortly, but almost all navigation on an Apple device when you are a VoiceOver user is going to be using the VoiceOver cursor. And here's where I want you to fall back on your fundamentals that we learned on day one. It kind of comes full circle, because if you remember, I told you back then that because we have a touchscreen device, we have to use another layer of interaction, because if we didn't, as a non-sighted user, we'd be randomly activating all sorts of stuff as we touch the screen that we didn't really mean to activate. And so they changed the gestures and they put the VoiceOver cursor in there, which is that little rectangle that people, if they can see when VoiceOver's on, they see that that rectangle highlights whatever the cursor is focusing. You remember that discussion. And that VoiceOver cursor concept actually preceded the iPhone. It was on the Mac first. When you want to navigate using the keyboard, you navigate by moving the VoiceOver cursor on the screen. So how do you do that? Well, again, we need to use a VoiceOver modifier. The VoiceOver modifier keys are Control and Option pressed together. Now, some people also use the caps lock. You can choose in your settings. And so if you don't want to use Control and Option, you can use caps lock. I tend to use Control and Option because that's what I was taught when I started using the Mac. That was the only way to do it. And so I still just fall back to that. But know that if you hear me say Control and Option, most of the time you can also substitute the caps lock key in there. I'm not going to say that every time, though, just for the sake of time. I'm just probably going to say Control and Option, or I'm going to take the real shortcut and I'm going to say VO, stands for VoiceOver. So if you hear me say press VO space, that means Control, Option, and the space bar, or caps lock space bar. But again, Control is the second key from the left. Option is the third one from the left. Press and hold those two keys together and press your space bar, and then let them all go. If I say VO space, that's how you do that. So now that you know that, you have that knowledge in your mind, we're going to look at how to navigate, and it's very simple. Because remember, navigation is left to right, and then it's going to wrap to the next row, and the next row beyond that, and so on. So if you want to move to the next element on the screen, it's VO right arrow, Control Option right arrow. If you want to move back to the previous element on the screen, it's VO left arrow. And if you want to activate something, the equivalent of the double tap, it's VO spacebar. Now, before we go any further, I think you can see why we say that it's so important to do and to really be comfortable with the touchscreen. Because imagine this scenario. Imagine that I want to get to an app that is in the fifth row and it's in the third column. You remember our apps layout on the home screen is a grid. You have a number of icons across and then, many rows. 6 rows, I think, on most iPhones. And then you have the dock. So let's say my app that I want is on the 5th row, 3rd column, and let's say it's on page 3. With on-screen navigation, especially as I get more comfortable with my phone, I can kind of know from muscle memory where the page selector is. So I can tap right on that and then swipe up twice, two times to get to page 3, or I can actually use the 3-finger swipe from right to left, and I can do that twice and get to page 3. And then I kind of know where the 5th row is and the 3rd column because I've done it enough. Maybe I land on the 4th row. Maybe I land on column 2. Maybe I'm not right on it. I have to swipe a couple times or drag my finger, but I can pretty quickly get to it from muscle memory, especially the more I do it. But on the keyboard, I would have to press VO right arrow a whole bunch of times until I get to where I want to be, because it's going to start me at the top left. And so if I do that, I got to press VO right arrow to go through all of those rows and columns until I get to the one that I want. I'm not trying to discourage. I mean, I guess I sort of am in a roundabout way, but it's personal preference. I'm not really trying to discourage you from using the keyboard to navigate. I'm sharing with you why I think it is so important to really use that touchscreen, because these are first and foremost touchscreen devices. You use the keyboard, you add another option in there to make things easier for you in some cases, absolutely. But just keep that in mind as you're navigating. So again, navigate to the next element, VO right arrow. Navigate to the previous element, VO left arrow. Double tap on what you are on, what's selected, VO spacebar. What if you want to long press? We know how important it is to double tap and hold on things to get contextual menus and so forth. And there is a command for that. It is VO Shift M, as in menu. So again, Control and Option held down together, as well as the Shift key. I would do those all with my left hand in this case, and then I would press the letter M with the right hand, and then I'd let them all go. That is the same thing as the equivalent to a long press on a particular item of interest. There's also a VOM command without the Shift key, which will take you to the status bar. So if you want to find out what's in the status bar, you can press VOM, and that'll bring you up there to the status bar. Another command worth remembering is VO dash or VO hyphen. I don't know what you want to call that, but that key up there to the left of the equals sign. So it's 2 to the left of the delete. And by the way, I need to talk about delete in a second. I'll come right back to that. But VO dash will magic tap. So your 2-finger double tap, start and stop music playback, answer a phone call, end a phone call. That VO dash will do that. Now, I mentioned delete for a moment. I said I need to talk about that. If you have a standard Apple keyboard or a third-party one that is made to look like an Apple keyboard, it will not have the numpad. If you get the numpad one, this is different. But if it doesn't have the numpad, you're only going to have one delete key, okay? Just like on your on-screen keyboard, you only have one delete key. But remember what I taught you about the delete in iOS. It actually functions like what Windows users will think of as a backspace key. But they don't call it backspace, they call it delete, but it deletes the previous character. So you Windows users, remember that. There's not a separate delete and a separate backspace. There's only one delete, but it's kind of what you would think of as a backspace. And that's true.
Technically not true. On the extended keyboard, there's actually a delete in that 9 or 6-pack. I can't remember what it is.
On
and
the one
also
with the
in
numpad,
the numpad,
there is, yes.
Yes. So.
And that one will delete the next character then, right? Just like it would on a PC keyboard with a delete key.
The one with the 9 in the 9, I think it's a 6-pack. The one in the 6-pack deletes the current character, and the one in the numpad deletes forward.
Okay, gotcha. So you can see there are some differences.
9 times out of 10, everybody's using the backspace anyway.
Right,
delete,
right.
Whatever you want to call it.
Whatever you want to call it, right. Yep. All right, so that is a bit about the keyboard layout and some of your most basic commands. There's another very basic one, and Cliff, you might have to remind me here because I don't often do this, but you can use keyboard commands to move the rotor, correct?
I mean, I guess to me it's a little more cumbersome than doing it the arrow keys way. But yes, you can.
Well, that's what. The arrow keys. If you press the
It's
Now,
the
what is
left
it?
and up and right and up. So
Yes.
left will take you clockwise, counterclockwise. So left and up will take you counterclockwise, and right and up will do it the clockwise way. But you also can hold down the VO keys in command and use your arrow left and right key, and then use your up and down arrow to go to the part of the action of that rotor item that you want to use. So
Okay, so that's another way to do it. VO command
yes,
and left and right arrows. And then I think just VO up and VO down will move to the next or previous whatever
right,
it is in the rotor, character or whatever,
right,
right? Now,
right.
we also then need to talk about quick nav, but before we do, because there's a couple of kinds of quick nav, I just want to also explain that there's a number of other keys that I'm not going to go into all of them. First of all, I probably don't know all of them because I don't use it that way. Cliff probably knows way more of them than I do, but also because it's too much to remember. And I'm going to tell you a little shortcut about where to find them if you want to look them up for yourself. But there are tons of them, and they're especially useful on things like websites in Safari. For example, VO command, so you're holding down the control and option and the command key, all three keys in a row there. And then if you press, while they're held down, if you press the letter H, that'll move to the next heading. If you add the shift key in, so it's VO command shift H, that's previous heading. And you can do all sorts of different ones. I think the L is for link, so VO command L, and then VO command shift L, next or previous, respectively. There's a whole bunch of these. And in a minute, I'm going to tell you where you can look them up for yourself.
Command R to reload the page. Um, Command what is it? I forgot the other one. But and the one that you do definitely want to point out is if they do VO command I, it's the item chooser, so they can select what item on the page, link, button, radio group, whatever they want to go to.
Right, right. And that will let you look through all of them, the way they alphabetically or whatever. You can, look at all the links, all the heading, item chooser. You can even search for a particular VO command I. Um, Now, the quick nav. What quick nav is designed to do is to make it easier and quicker to navigate by eliminating some of the keys that you need to hold down. There are two kinds of quick nav. There's what's known as single key quick nav, and there's what's known as arrow key quick nav. Now, Cliff, because you're the keyboard king here and I don't do this, do you have to have arrow key quick nav turned on in order to use single key quick nav?
Don't know because I don't use single key quick nav that
Okay.
often.
Okay.
And single key quick nav is usually only used on web pages,
Right.
not in apps or
Right.
the home screen.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I
I
think
don't.
there's a setting. I think in settings you can tweak it that way, but I don't use it that way
Yeah.
because it's annoying. Number one, and number two, it
Right.
doesn't allow you to type in edit fields.
Well,
So
and that's what I didn't even get to yet, but you're absolutely right. I know there used to be a time where you had to have arrow key quick nav on in order to use single key. I'm not 100% sure that that's true anymore. I think, like you say, those settings can be toggled individually now. But I haven't actually tried it, so I can't attest to that for sure. But so the arrow key quick nav, what that's going to do is it will eliminate the need to hold down the control and option keys. If you want to navigate where you normally would have to press VO right arrow, VO left arrow, you would just now be able to press the left arrow or the right arrow without any VO keys. And that's arrow key quick nav. To turn that on, how do you do that? You press the left and right arrow keys together to turn it on. You press the left and right arrow keys together to turn it off. Or you can actually now do it in settings as well. But again, that is arrow key quick nav.
and
Single,
I would encourage you to check to play with or go look at the settings for quick nav because there's
yes,
a lot of them. Number one, like Matt just discussed, you can have single key navigation on or off, or you can actually have quick nav, when you press the left and right arrows together to turn it on and off, you can either have it speak it or make a sound. So there's a lot of customizable options that you can do in there with quick nav if you choose to use a keyboard 1 or 2, use quick nav.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because
Also, I think one of the problems that people have when they start to panic and say, nothing's working, I can't move anything, I can't do anything. It's usually because your quick nav is on. So remember where you're at. Remember if it's on or off before you
right,
panic.
right. And so the single key, or rather the arrow key quick nav is what we just described. The single key quick nav, as Cliff pointed out, is generally used on websites where instead of having to do, remember how I told you like VO Command H moves to the next heading, VO Command Shift H moves to the previous heading, and so on. You now would just press the letter H or Shift H or L or Shift L. You don't have to hold down all of those extra keys. So then someone might ask, well, if that's the case, why would I ever want to not use quick nav? If it's that much easier, I don't have to hold down these extra keys. Why would I ever want to not? And the reason is because there are some situations where you do not want to move by moving the voiceover cursor. So let me try to explain this to you as concisely but as thoroughly as possible. Remember that I said to navigate most of the time, with a couple exceptions, you're going to move the voiceover cursor. That will move from element to element on the screen. There is at least one situation in particular where you're going to need to move differently, and that is when you are editing text inside of an edit field. Now, let's try and think about this. You double tap on an edit field to open it up, or you VO space on it to open it up, and now you're inside the edit field. If you press VO left arrow or VO right arrow, what's going to happen? Well, think about it this way. What if I double tap on an edit field and then I swipe to the left? Where's it going to take me? It's going to take me outside of that edit field, right? It's going to take me before the edit field, or it's going to take me after the edit field. It's not going to keep me inside of it. If I want to navigate by character or by word to review what I've typed, I have to use the rotor. Well, the same thing is true when you're using the keyboard. If you do VO left arrow while you're in an edit field, it's going to take you to the prior element outside of the edit field. So then your question to me is, then do I have to use the rotor commands to navigate by character and by word while I'm in the edit field? Actually not, because here's a case where Apple has standard Mac OS commands. Remember, at the beginning of this, I said almost all navigation is using voiceover commands because you're moving the voiceover cursor. It's not like Windows where you're using mostly system commands. But on Mac OS and iOS, there are system commands. These are commands that everybody can use even if they're not using voiceover. And these are things like Command I for italic, Command B for bold. And if you look at like websites, you can do Command R to refresh or reload the page. That's not a voiceover command. That's a Mac and iOS command. So those kinds of commands will work. And then Apple has also created iOS and macOS commands that allow you to move the system insertion point. And these are not voiceover commands. So in order to be able to use the arrow keys to move around within an edit field, you need to have Quick Nav turned off. Now, normally it's supposed to automatically, when you double tap or VO space on an edit field, it's supposed to automatically turn Quick Nav off until you leave the edit field. But if you ever, like Sarah said, if you ever try to move and it's not doing what you expect, you can double check that. Press the left and right arrow keys together or what have you.
That is not necessarily true anymore.
Which, that it automatically turns off, you mean, or that?
Yes, because there's a setting in the quick. That's why I told people to go to their quick nav settings and tweak it the way they want to. It took me a while to figure out that this wasn't a bug. This is the way Apple designed it. So I didn't report it. I just played with it some more. So what it does now is when you VO spacebar or up and down arrow together with quick nav on to type in an edit field, quick nav does not turn off, but it does allow you to type in it. And I actually kind of like this because if I already know what I'm going to type, I don't want to have to review it. So what it does is, like, say I gotta write my name, and I write my name in the edit field. All I gotta do is hit the right arrow, and it'll go to the next edit field, or whatever. If I want to review it, then I would go back and manually turn off Quick Nav and use the arrow keys to review it. But it's not automatic anymore. Now you could set it to be that way, but I didn't because I like the fact that once I type something, I can just automatically right arrow to the next thing to do. So it's all about personal preference.
So
But yes,
you're
you
so
can
you're
set it.
basically saying that voiceover is not going to say letter by letter, like so that you can go through and make sure you put the right thing in.
Not until you turn quick nav off manually,
Right.
unless you have it set to turn off automatically, because there
Right.
is a setting in there for that. But I don't use it because I like the way
Yeah.
that it's set up now, where I can VO space bar or up and down arrow to activate the edit field, type what I want, and move on to the next one without having to turn quick nav back on. So it doesn't go off automatically for me anyway, but you can set it that way.
So it's up to you. Whichever you like, then you would just have to change the setting. But this is important to remember, because if you do want to review what you've typed by character or by word or so on, you're going to want to turn Quick Nav off, at least temporarily, while you're in that edit field. And I'm going to go over the commands
Or
for,
set it to do it that way,
or
because like
set
I
it to
said,
do it.
there is
Right,
a setting in the quick nav area of voiceover to do that.
right. Okay. So when we are in an edit field, if we've turned Quick Nav off, there are some important commands that we can use to review what we've typed and to edit. And so I want to go over these with you, because these are a little more obscure as far as finding them. So I want to make sure you have them. If you move with just the left, and again, this is with Quick Nav off. If you press left arrow or right arrow by itself while you're in an edit field, it's going to move to the next or previous character. Again, this is a system command, not a voiceover command, so you don't need VO keys, and this will work even for folks who do not use voiceover. Left arrow to go to the previous character, right arrow to go to the next character. As for what voiceover does, it's just like when you use the rotor to navigate by character or by word. It's going to speak the thing that it passes over, that it goes, or that it moves across. I'm not going to go into detail about that today, because we did that extensively when we talked about advanced editing. So go back and listen to that if you need to. My analogy about people sitting at a table at a restaurant together and passing by each other as you walk by. Listen to that again. But it's the same thing that voiceover will do here. But press the left arrow to go to the previous character, the right arrow to go to the next character. If you want to move word by word, you add the Option key. Remember, that's the third one from the left at the bottom row. And that's going to, Option left arrow will move to the previous word. Option right arrow moves to the next word. You can move line by line with just the up arrow or the down arrow key within an edit field. Pretty obvious which one does which, I think. You can also move to the beginning of a line by pressing Command left arrow. And you can move to the end of a line by pressing Command right arrow. You can also move to the very beginning of an edit field or the very beginning of a document, such as in Pages or something like that, by pressing Command up arrow, and the very end by pressing Command down arrow. Now, on top of all of these, if you add the Shift key into any of them, you will be selecting the text that you pass by. So if, for example, I want to select the next 5 words of text in my document or in the edit field, I would press Option Shift right arrow, because Option right arrow moves by word to the next word. But if I add the Shift key, so Shift Option right arrow, now that's going to select as I move. Once you have things selected, of course, there's a lot of commands that are very similar to what you have in Windows, except instead of the Control key, you're going to use the Command key. Things like Command C to copy, Command V to paste, Command Z to undo, Command Shift Z to redo, all of these kinds of things. Again, like Command I for italicizing and Command B for bold, what's selected, all of those kinds of things will work in most scenarios, especially in, documents and so on. Maybe not in an edit field on a website necessarily, but, other than that. And then, again, don't forget that if you want to use Quick Nav and you haven't enabled the automatic switching in the settings, then you need to turn Quick Nav back on when you're finished with that. There are so many more commands, both voiceover commands and Apple iOS commands. And the Apple iOS commands are often specific to a particular app that you might be using. The voiceover commands are across the board. Another voiceover command that I didn't tell you about is VOH, which will take you back to the home screen. If your keyboard has an escape key, that may also work, or there's other ways on an iPad we won't get into in this class, but VOH will take you back to the home screen. So the question becomes, how do I find all of these commands if I want to do so, and if I want to, look them up? Well, there's a couple of things that I would encourage. The first thing is keyboard help. And this is kind of the same thing as the voiceover help that you can access on the screen, where you try different gestures and it tells you what they do, but it doesn't actually affect anything. So you can do that with the keyboard by pressing VOK. That's Control Option K. And that will turn on the keyboard help. You can press any key to hear what it is, press combinations of keys to hear what they do. It's not going to tell you typically the iOS system commands, because again, they tend to be different depending on what app you're in, but it will tell you what the voiceover key combinations do. So if you press, VO right arrow, it's going to tell you that moves to the next item on the screen and so forth. And when you're finished, you can press VOK to turn it off. That's keyboard help, and that's very useful to practice what you are trying to do on the keyboard. But there's also a place where you can read every keyboard voiceover command if you choose to do so. And you go to Settings. You're going to go to Accessibility, Voiceover, Commands. And that's the same place we talked about earlier on in the year, where you can go to All Commands, you can go to Touch Gestures. Well, one of the options you have there is Keyboard Commands. And so you can read all of again, these are the voiceover specific keyboard commands that you have that are available to you. And there might even be some that you can custom assign, just like with gestures. You're going to find some really cool ones like VOT, Control Option T, as in Tango, which will read the attributes of what is under the voiceover cursor. Like, is it bold? Is it italicized? Whatever. You can do VO Command E to go to the next misspelled word, and VO Command Shift E to go to the previous misspelling. I mean, there's so many, but you're going to find all of these there under the voiceover commands section within your settings. And it's this onboard help system, really, that you can read all these commands to see what they do. Now, as far as the iOS system keyboard shortcuts, many of the apps that you will use, especially the sort of productivity apps like Pages, Keynote, and Numbers, if you go into their help systems, they'll have a section of keyboard commands. And those will not be voiceover commands. They'll be system commands that anyone can use in the app. So they'll show you some of the commands that Pages supports and things of that nature. What I don't know is, and Cliff, maybe you can answer this question, is there any way, like you did of course, they've changed it on the iPad also. You and I talked about that, but you used to press and hold the command key to get a list of commands. Is there anything like that when you're using the iPhone, or no?
Not that I can remember. I mean, I've just been using the iPhone for so long, so it's just elementary to me. But I don't think so. I think the only way you could get them is to, go to that list of commands. Another couple ones that I'll throw out here that you might have just forgot about. When you're on the home screen, if you hold down the control key and hit the up arrow, it'll take you to the top of your screen, meaning the very first app. And if you do control down arrow, it'll take you to the very bottom of your screen, and that usually is the last um, app in your dock or folder. It also works in messages and mail if you want to go to the top or bottom of an email or mailboxes and stuff. And then, of course, we got VOM that's going to take you to the status bar where the
Yep, VO.
time and battery status is at. And while you're in the status bar, if you do um, option up arrow, it will take you to your notification center. And if you do option down arrow, it will take you to the control center. So, and the rest of them you can just find in the commands because they're all listed there. But them are just a little teasers I gave you because if you're planning on using a keyboard, those ones could be essential.
And I will just say also that if you're in this class and you're thinking about the iPad and you're thinking about really wanting to navigate more with the keyboard, the iPad is incredible for this now, and Cliff can attest to this. Now, we're still going to teach touchscreen first in the iPad
Always.
class, but we are going to put more emphasis on the keyboard because Apple has taken steps to bring iPad OS pretty much in line with Mac OS. There are obvious differences, but now, for the first time, iPad OS has the option of using a true menu bar and windowed apps and you don't have to. If you still like your iPad in, single app view, full screen, that's fine. You can do that. But you now have that option. And along with the menu bar has come a whole host of commands that you can use to do things like if you're in the mail app, what is it again, Cliff? Is it Shift Command A to insert or what's the attachment one?
Yep, that's command shift A. Yep.
Yeah, Command Shift A will insert an attachment, and there's all of these things, and so it's really a powerful
And you could
experience.
also use command 1 through 4 to go through your inboxes. So if you have 4 or 5, maybe even 6 mail accounts, and they all have different inboxes, you can use command 1 through 6 to get to those different inboxes if you know that. So
Yeah,
in
yeah.
messages, you can do command 1 through 5 to get to your pinned conversation. So there's a lot. And I used to have a MacBook Air, folks. I bought it back last April. I sold it and bought the iPad Pro with the keyboard you got to sell a couple kids to get, but and got the iPad specifically for this reason because the iPad number one is lighter, and number two, I was just amazed at the integration of Mac OS into the iPad. On top of that, you can get cellular data on an iPad you cannot get on a Mac or PC unless you connect to a hotspot. So that was my main reason for getting the iPad Pro again.
Absolutely.
I mean, I do have a Mac Studio at home where I do all my recording and editing, and sometimes when I host Zoom calls because it's easier on the Mac than it is on the phone. But 90% of my workflow stuff is now done on the iPad with pages and messages and stuff like that. Trust me when I tell you, I love my Mac Studio. I'll never get rid of that because there's things that the Mac can do that the iPad can't. But there are things that I don't need to do on my iPad. So.
All right. So anything else to
Matt,
add?
did you get somebody for Braille displays, or would you like me to cover that?
Well, if you want to go ahead and cover it, that's fine. I didn't, I was going to work on that, but you can go ahead if you're ready to. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Braille with the iPhone is way better than it used to be. A lot of people love, and Sarah, I'm pretty sure you can attest to this. A lot of people love BSI, which is Braille screen input, meaning you can put it in the rotor, activate it. Me and Matt both disabled it because I hate when it comes up by accident. But you can do Braille screen input on your phone, meaning you can use Perkins style Braille um, combinations to write in Braille on your screen, and that serves as technically another keyboard of writing. And it doesn't matter if you're texting somebody blind or sighted; it will come up to them as text, or Voiceover will read it. I use the Mantis. I love the Mantis. Number one, it's the one Braille display that's come out in the last 6 or 7 years that has the least amount of problems. It's a QWERTY keyboard with a 40 cell Braille display. It pairs wonderfully with the phone and iPad. And it also pairs with up to 3 devices. hint hint Apple, but but it pairs with the iPhone wonderfully. You even have built-in stuff on the mattress if any of you have it. You get Newsline, you can get Bard, so you can read books in Braille on there. It works great with the Bible Uverse app. I can't attest to any other app because the Uverse app to me is the best one. There's other ones that some people use for research and stuff, but that's the one that I use. What else is on there? There's a document or like a scratch pad where you can write notes. But this is all null and void to me though, because with the Mantis, once it connects to my phone, I have access to all my apps, notes, pages, email, messages, Safari, any app that I want to use on my phone pops up on my Braille display. So I've also used the Braille emotion. That's lowercase e, capital M emotion. Some people compare it to the Braille Sense 6, but I think it's better because it has more features, has a Bluetooth connection button, it has a Wi-Fi connection button, and it also has a devices button. So and it also pairs with 3 devices, Apple. Anyway, so if you want to switch devices, you can just push that button and it automatically goes to, whatever it's connected to, the iPad, Mac, whatever. And it works great with the iPhone. It also has NFB Newsline, connecting to Bookshare, all those services. But again, once it's connected to your iPhone, you don't need none of those services because you have automatic access to the web and what's at your fingertips in Braille. What else one have I used? I have tried the Focus, but that to me one is a legacy, a dinosaur, ancient, for lack of a better term, because one, it has the most problems out of the Braille displays that I've used, and two, I don't hear people talk about it much anymore. It's all about the Braille Sense, the Mantis. I think some people use the Monarch is a newer one. And it also, you got to spell your whole family to get that one because it's $18,000. That one's going to be in colleges and for professors. But it also, I don't even think it compare with the iPhone if I'm not mistaken. That's more PC driven and graphics, because they can do graphics and design. The one demonstration that I saw was all about, showing you the states on a map and countries and continents and stuff like that. So I can't speak too much of that, but um most Braille displays from what I've heard, because I can't think of the other ones, but there's, oh yeah, the Orbit. The Orbit also is a good one that pairs with the iPhone people talk about, but I've heard that one is a bit noisy, so it's all about personal preference. But if there's any other ones that somebody uses with the phone, raise your hand and we'll get your input on it when we go to Q&A. But the Mantis, the Emotion, and the Braille Sense 6 are the three that I know work perfectly with the iPhone, no hiccups. There's one here and there. There was a Bluetooth issue with the Mantis when it first got to iOS 26, but they've since fixed that, so it's not even worth mentioning. So,
Cliff, can you talk to us about, or maybe you haven't done this yet, but I actually do know someone who has, if we need to bring them in, maybe if we can get them next week. But can you talk to us about the new Braille note taker option that has been added to iOS 26?
I can't because I don't
Okay.
use it. So yeah, you're gonna have to bring somebody else in on that. I'm not. I'm not gonna say I don't like Braille because I love reading it. I just don't like writing it. That's why I use the Mantis, which has the QWERTY keyboard. Um, but like I said, some people swear by that BSI and they love doing it. And hey, to each their own. That's why we got personal preference, right? So
Right,
like I
right.
said, I have played with it just a little bit, but I have not played with it enough to be able to talk about it. So maybe we can
Okay,
get
I'll
somebody else
I'll
next
see
week
if
and
I can
talk
line that
about it.
up for Monday, just so folks have an
Okay.
idea. Because I know some people were
Uh-oh.
asking.
The troublemaker has her hand up, Sarah. Go ahead and get Viola. I know she must know about
She
it.
probably
Well,
has used it, right?
Yes, because she
yeah,
does use a lot of Braille is
Okay,
probably her second language.
okay. Well, maybe I won't even have to bring somebody else in. Then let's see what Viola has to say.
I think
and and
Paniotis raised his hand
and
first.
and and, and Viola was probably gonna poke holes in everything that I said. So
Paniotis, you can unmute now.
Okay, I hope I'm heard now.
Yes.
yes, you can.
Okay. Okay, greetings to all. I just wanted to mention that the German firm Help Check, that's probably known to most of you as Handitech, has also produced a device I cannot compare it to Mantis or Brailsense or whatever. It's called the Activator, and it's
Yeah, I played
becoming
with that one too. I love that one because it has the QWERTY on one side and the Perkins style keyboard on the other.
yes, and it's becoming very popular, except for the price, which
Yeah,
is
exactly.
impossible. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that because it claims to be specifically done for Apple devices, the activator. So
It does.
uh,
Yep.
hmm, perhaps this might be considered. I have no personal experience of either, so uh, I'm just
Yeah.
bringing
And thanks for
it along.
reminding me about that. Like I said, like you said,
Yeah.
it's a great device except for the price. What USD, it's
Hmm.
about 6,000. What is it over there?
Hmm. Okay, so I'm going to wish you a very, very merry, great Christmas to all of you, just in
Same to
case
you.
you won't hear my voice till the end of the course.
All right. Same to you. You too.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Mm.
I think those kind of things, the high price is probably for corporations, institutions, like
Yeah, I
not for
mean, you'd be
individual
surprised.
purchase.
A lot of VRs are buying them though. So I mean, because the Braille Sense is somewhere in that neighborhood too, about 4 or 5 thousand. So,
Yeah,
and I think if I'm not
Yeah.
it's
mistaken, the Edge was that price too. The
yeah.
Braille
Yeah.
Edge.
I guess it's banking on the fact that you have help from your state or from,
Right. Right. Yep.
I mean,
Well,
because Braille is expensive. The more sales you get, especially.
that's always what we used to deal with before we had Apple. If you think about what JAWS used to cost and might still cost, I don't know. I think they lowered the price some, but all that AT is pricey. Um,
Okay, Viola, you can unmute.
Go ahead, Viola, poke holes in everything that I just said.
No, no, no. Actually, I have a Braille Sense 6, which is in the $5,000 or $6,000 range. Yes. I have an emotion because I bought it for my husband. He decided he didn't want it, so now I
I
have
was about
it.
to say, you bought it for your
And
husband. How much has he actually got to play with it?
he didn't want to. He still uses his Packmate. Give me a break.
oh
Uh,
my.
Dang, my
Yeah, yeah,
goodness,
yeah.
that's like
But no,
2002,
that's his
ain't it?
preference,
Okay.
but it still works. He uses it. That's okay. But when it breaks, I'll say, okay, what do we do now? But okay, I like the Emotion best and the Braille Sense 6 because they're obviously made by the same company and they're similar in keystrokes. I have the Brilliant. That it's okay, but it has a few more problems sometimes connecting and stuff. But I really like that Emotion. It's easy to use, and I wish I could get a Mantis, but I can't justify it, Cliff. Sorry, but I would love to have one. I
Now,
really would
Viola,
because I like to use the QWERTY keyboard as well sometimes. Yes, I am a Braille user, but the reason that I do that, guys, is because I deal with students who use Braille and I
right,
have
Yep.
to
right.
know the commands. And if
Yep,
I don't
yep.
use it, I will forget them.
Now, have you played with
Yeah,
the note taker
Right.
feature on
That's
the
what I was going
phone,
to ask
no,
you.
Dave?
You've,
no, I
okay.
didn't even know it was there, so I will.
Okay.
Just to
I
just
have
to answer your questions, I will.
and I forgot about this, guys, when we were talking about this for today. But I have a guy that I contract with. Well, you guys know who he is. I've talked about Dave before. Um, I contract with a guy when I do like state contracts and stuff, and he has used that. So I'm going to actually see if he can either come in or maybe just make a recording. We may end up having some bonus recordings for this class that because I still don't think we're going to get through everything. We may not even get to the cell providers until Monday now at this point, but I still wanted to show you a couple other apps real quickly. So you might end up with some bonus recordings that we don't do live, but I'll get some information on that note taker thing because there's even like you can use different commands on your braille display and then like it will go directly into the notes app and it sounded really cool if I used braille, which I don't, but I mean it sounded like something that I thought was interesting for those folks who use it.
Right.
Thanks for joining today's session. didn't get your question answered? Have an additional comment or feedback? Email us info@ttjtech.biz or info@stirritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U. That's STURITUP.com. Or check out our websites for additional resources. That's ttjtech.biz or stirritup.com. And remember, subscribe to the newsletter when you're there. That way, you don't miss out on any upcoming announcements or events. Thanks for joining us. God bless, and see you next time.